and you don't have no business with that on. They said, the man says, listen, there was a man who said to me, take up my bed and walk. He liberated me. And the people and the Jews say, well, who is this man? And the Bible says that the man said, look, I don't know who he is, because they got away from it because there was a large crowd. Wait a minute, I gotta stop right here. Whenever Jesus is lifted up, wherever his presence is, he is guaranteed to draw men to himself. Am I in the right church here? Whenever Jesus is lifted up, then he will draw. When Jesus is lifted up, and we need to get out of this lifting up ourselves, where ministry is about it's about me. I can preach. I can do this. I can do that. I'm anointed. Who are you? You're just dust. And let me tell you something. Sooner or later, you're going to drop dead. And the Bible says, the text says to us that Jesus, I don't have no 3 points tonight. I'm just going to preach. The text says that the man met Jesus while walking in the temple. Jesus sees this man and says, man, you have been made free. You have been liberated. Sin no more, lest the worst thing come upon you. Listen, when the same Christ that frees you is the same Christ that has lordship over you. What do you mean? He has authority to tell me what I can and cannot do. And we church folk, I'm going back to him. Church folk come to church, but are not willing to be the church. I said, and I'm going to say it again, church folk that dress up with the Sunday morning look. Church that can speak in tongues. And cut a step. These church folk that can hoop, holler, squall, percolate. These church folk, when they leave the door, they don't live anything. Not submitted to the lordship of Christ. Now watch this. I'm not saying perfection, but I'm saying living a life of maturity. Just living the life of maturity. Jesus says, listen, look, man, I've given you freedom over your mess. Now I'm giving you freedom over your conduct. You have the ability through the grace of God. The grace of God. Because apart from grace, you can do nothing. Because you are sinful and utterly wicked. That's what the word says. And so now, with the grace of God gives me the strength to live out the call of God on my life. And so the Bible says to us, and I'm done now. The Bible says to us that the man found the Jews. And he says to the Jews, I didn't have an answer before, but I got an answer now. He goes back to the church folk. Now watch this. He doesn't go back and cuss them out. Am I in the right church here? He doesn't go back and say, you old mother so-and-so. No. He didn't say, you old son of, how's your mama doing? But what he says, he preaches a sermon. Now the question, someone said, well, brother pastor, what was the sermon he preached? Well, I'll tell you what the sermon he preached. The text says that he went back and the title of his message was, It Was Jesus. It was Jesus. And my brothers and my sisters, as I go along here, I got to get back to Philadelphia. But as I go along here, I think we ought to, whenever church folk come up against us, whenever people say what they're going to say against us, we ought to be able to say, it was Jesus. It was Jesus that brought me out. It was Jesus that made me free. It was Jesus. I wish you would look over and somebody and tell them, it was Jesus. Yes. And you know what, my brothers and my sisters, when you proclaim Jesus, somebody will get saved. That's why we got to get back to preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. We got to get back to telling the world that there is one who has died on an old rugged tree. We got to get back and tell someone that he was nailed in his hands. Do you hear me this evening? We got to go back and tell folk that he was hung high and he was robbed low. We got to go and we got to tell people that he died. Do you know he died? He died. I certainly died. We got to continue to tell people that he went on in the grave and he stayed right there. And he stayed there for 3 long days. And he stayed there for 3 long nights. But then not only must we tell that, but we got to do like the old Baptist preachers would say. We got to say, early Sunday morning, he got up with all power in his own hand. It was Jesus. It was Jesus. Yeah. It was Jesus who brought me out. It was Jesus that made me free. Shout glory. Shout glory.